quick. You've probably seen these before, but this is Dale Nish's way of doing production birdhouses. Instead of hollowing it out from scratch, you take a 7/8 inch drill bit or a 1 inch drill bit, drill all the way down to about approximate depth you want, and then you just hollow out where the hole's going to be. So it looks like you hollow the whole thing out. You leave a little bit of the drill bit ring at the bottom, and of course the top is the same diameter. And then you have this mounted in a chuck, and you can just mount your reverse turn your piece right on there, and it's dead center because it lines up on a little bit of mortise down at the top and a little bit that's in here. So you don't have to mess around with trying to get it in just right. It automatically lines up. So you can do a whole bunch of bottoms and then a whole bunch of tops. And then for the tops, you have the sort of the opposite thing, where usually I'll put like a 1 inch tenon on my tops, and then I drill a 1 inch hole here. I actually drill a 7/8 inch hole and then open it up so my top fits in. And then I can just do a whole bunch of tops and fit them on instead of doing it the old way where you do a bottom and then you jam fit the top onto the bottom and finish it and stuff. You can do a whole bunch of production with this. There's a whole bunch of different ones you can make. And if for some reason you have trouble getting your tenons all the same diameter, I have several of these to fix for the top. Usually I go with the smallest top and then get bigger and bigger, and that way I can open it up. And then this is really meant for my ikibanas, where I drill 1 3/4 hole in a piece of wood for the little Kenzen thing that goes in there. So I can finish both sides. What I would do is I would hold the base in my hand, spray the top, and then I just stick this in and flip it over, and then I put it on the Lazy Susan and I can spray the bottom. That way I do both surfaces at once. And for my stool seats, I have a similar jig, which I don't know where it is. I had it in the bag, I thought, but it's like a 3/8 inch dowel, or actually it's a 1/2 inch dowel, and I made a little 3/8 inch tenon on it to fit the hole in my seat that I use for my screw chuck. And then I do the same process. I spray the bottom, stick that dowel in here, flip it over, put it on my Lazy Susan, and the dowel fits in the hole for the screw chuck so it stays on better, and then I'll just spin it and spray it. Tear the whole place up. That's just a little Lazy Susan insert and a scrap piece of wood. So that's all I got, and then I guess you can next.
Alan?
Yeah.
When you put that stand in the ikebana,
Yeah.
after you spray it out, does that stick in there? I guess not.
No, because I don't really spray the hole.
Okay.
There's
That's
no
for
need to
spraying,
spray the
not for
hole.
turning.
I'm just spraying the outside. So I don't really spray the hole where the Kenzen goes because you don't need to.
Right. Don't you get over spray into the hole?
You're right, but it's not enough. It's not enough.
It makes it just a little bit loose and it wouldn't matter, right?
Yeah, this isn't a tight fit, but he's thinking about the spray
Oh, yeah, I
finish
understand.
sticking out here. Yeah, I never get enough spray in that hole for it to stick. Oh, yeah. You're the wrong guy. You're supposed to be great.
Hey, I'm Brett Olson. I'm one of the masochists that gets into doing open segment bowls. This is the jig I use for gluing up my bowl blank. What I do is start off with my base, mount it onto either faceplate or a chuck, where I can screw it on and off. It's got a dial on here that's set up for doing 48 or 24 or 12 segmented bowls, open segment bowls. I've got this crossbar. Once you put the initial blank down and you've got your segments cut out, what you would do is I have a scratched on my plexiglass here so that I can line up the dial starting. It really doesn't matter any one of the reference points on my dial, and then mount it on here. Lower this down, this horizontal bar down. I've got a gauge taped on to the top so I can measure in. The end of this bar is directly lined up over the center. What I would do is lower this down to close to the blank, and then set my stop for my initial radius for the first ring. and then proceed, use this as a guide for gluing the piece down, and then proceed to the next location for the next piece, and then glue that down, and then move around. Then I would take after the first ring glue sets up, I'd take the piece off, put it on the lathe, sand it down flat, and then come back and do it again, and do that again, and do that again. Each ring I'm finding takes me about an hour to get through, so it's very time consuming. All for the joy of spending 2 hours to actually turning on the lathe. So.
Wow. Is that piece over there, that segmented bowl yours?
Yes.
Bravo.
How many pieces?
That one has 529.
You couldn't figure out how to put one more in?
Actually, it's a multiple of 24 plus 1.
Got the boss.
My name is Mike Bulak. I'm new to the club. I was fortunate to be with the Bay Area Woodturners. Most of these things I did not invent. And I have the person that helped come up with these things. I took some courses from him. A lot of this was already in the AAW magazine. I think these are some reprints from it. I think it's around 2005, winter of 2005. So I have his website here, and I have the segmented instructions. And
have you done any modifications on what you started with? Even better?
yeah. You can see by the first one is the sled. The first modification was the addition of these two because I went too far. This is a good modification, but necessity being the mother of invention. I decided to put two clamps down that seemed to work better that way. And then this handle I put in there so that you have a place to put this hand. Yeah. And you keep it on this place because this hand is busy with this tool when you're cutting the pieces and moving it aside. So this hand is busy with this hand is busy on this, and nothing happens in the
So you
middle.
don't lose track.
So you don't lose track. You just got to keep in mind. Don't let go of this. Don't let go of that. And just keep cutting and putting it back and forth. Yeah, all 10. Fortunately.
I take it that angle is adjustable?
No, this one's not. This one is built the way it is.
And it's a jig for how many pieces? 12
12,
or 24?
yeah, 12.
Is that a standard segment? Yeah. 12?
Yeah, 15 degree. Yeah. The next step, and then this is just an Allen wrench, sharpened up, and drill a hole and made a handle out of some scrap walnut that I had. This is for my, I have a Delta 12-inch sanding disc. And so this fine tunes the angle. And once I'm done cutting them, I set this to where it needs to be. This just slides back and forth. This little groove, what I did there, I cut that, then routed out the groove and then glued it back together. Made a handle out of something that I had. And basically, I found the hardest part was to make sure that the sanding disc is 90 degrees. But with the Wixie, it's easy to do because you set it on the metal disc, set that at 0, and then set it on the movable table to 90. So you don't have to, so there's more than one way to skin that cat. The last piece on the segment, it was, again, a sanding stick. This is nothing new, but I have a, I think it's a 3x21 belt sander. And that's what this is. I had a couple of them. I don't get to use it much, but now I get to use this. I just use the 3M 77 or whatever it is. And I made sure this piece is dead flat. I could have used plywood, I guess, but and the reason these things are squared is because I had used this for something else, and I ran it through a thickness planer to take the round corners off, and it works really well for flattening the rings. Sorry, yeah.
So it's just a manual belt
Yeah.
sander. Gotcha.
How it is. This is a parting tool. We got a bunch of these are just hacksaw blades, 16th inch. And again, the hardest part was grinding the teeth off. Made the oval handle. And it works. works fine. This is just a copy of the Easy Wood tool. This is just a half-inch square called a weld rod. I bought an 8/32 tap and die set. Drilled a hole. This is an Easy Wood piece. I didn't make this, and this they were giving away. So I noticed on the Easy Wood they seem to have a maximum reach of 4 inches, I guess, for the leverage. So I put that on and I made sure that this is just a magnet on here. So make sure you're level all the time, and then it's just a maple handle that I made. Have a piece of copper ring. 2 years ago, when I retired, my wife got me my Powermatic, and I couldn't, it took 2 hands to lock the button. Of course, now they come up with something different, but before that, I came up with this, where you just loosen the bottom screw and it goes in there and tighten it back up. You hold the button and it's held, and when you're done, you just flip it on down. So, pardon me?
The other way is to drill a hole.
Yeah, so you do that. This was more interesting for me. Yeah, this was more fun. But like I said, now that I made it, they now sell a thing that you just slide it in. So if you ever want to back design something, let me know. I'm good at that. This again is not mine. This is Tim Yoder. I'm sure many of you have seen this. This is the sandpaper sled that he uses. You start out with a piece of sandpaper. I have it marked 1, 2, and 3. You can see the way the orientation of the paper is. Mark it on 1.
That's a hacksaw blade?
I did that wrong. Yes, that's a hacksaw blade. That's why I brought some more white sandpaper. No, I did that right. 1, 2, and 3.
Installing your X-Acto knife blades or whatever.
And then you have these, and they fit nicely. And I use a Rolodex card file. I use that, and I just have them all, 60, 80, 120, and just put them all up like that.
I'm curious about your permanent 15 degree. How'd you get it to be 15 degrees and not like 14.97
Well,
or 15.03?
I did the best I could.
Okay. And then the sanding helps you out?
And then the sanding, that 0.09 difference, the sanding helps you out on that. But this one has to be. And I bought the, what's on, the gauge that,
Incra?
yeah, you have to buy something.
I took a little different approach to it myself.
How's that?
I found the deal on a small compound miter saw, putts with it and putts with it and putts with it till I had it at 15.000. Couple drops of super glue. It's been at 15.000
Ever since. Then I'll just
until you
take all
drop
this
it.
stuff and come over to your house next time.
I built a measuring gauge into the, on the fence, so I can just set my distance, lock it with a clamp, and go. The only problem that creates is as you cut the piece of wood, it's wedged up against something, it's got nowhere to go, so you cut through, wait on the blade to quit turning, lift, and then you can take the piece out. But haven't missed yet.
Yeah, that's great. So basically that's it. I haven't done a lot of these, but the next class I took from Jim was duplicates. So I decided to make a duplicate, but with opposite wood, maple on walnut versus walnut on maple.
So as a pair.
Sell them as a pair, bookends. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
Very good. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to see we got a great turnout. I have a lot of things here. I'm going to go pretty quickly. Feel free to hit me afterwards if you have any questions.
We can hit you afterwards.
Yes. You can hit me now if you want. All right. These are center finders, but they're also circle finders. And the reason they work for both is I made the holes with the screws that you can put it over a square chunk of wood, give it a little rotation, and find the center on it. That's one way to use them. The other way is to put it down on a half a log, put your awl in the middle, once you've more or less lined this up where you want it to be, and then you can put your pencil in any hole, go around the circle, and it's a very quick way to mark the circle before you do bandsaw. But even better yet is when you use one hole and then use another hole a half an inch away, you kind of give yourself two lines that you run your bandsaw in the middle, and it tends to help me get it so I'm not ever crossing the inner line and have a low spot. I have these in different sizes because for people with smaller lathes, you want the smaller ones. I have a big lathe, so I need a big one, but I don't want to always have to use the big one to do smaller projects. So I got three sizes or so of these. Next item is for people who have stronghold chucks, which is a one-way product, and I have 5 different jaws. And every single time you put a different jaw set on or a different chuck, you get your calibers out. And every time you get your calibers out, you risk dropping it, bending it, breaking it, something. So I put all 4 measurements on a gauge for each set of jaws. This is both the inside and the outside on both the jaws at their minimum distance and their maximum distance. This allows me to get this piece of wood out, mark on the place where I want to do the tenon or where I want to do the hollow it out for an expansion connection. And there's one for each set here. Number 1 jaws, number 2 spigot, number 4, and number 5. Or number 3 and number 4. Some of you have seen this. This tool helps you come up with the golden mean, and someone here was explaining the golden mean. Jeff said
1.618 to 1.
to 1. Okay, which many people look at as a rule of thirds, 2/3 to 1/3. And depending where you expand this, this gives you an ability to put that high spot or low spot in approximately where you want to put it if you're trying to make it look aesthetically pleasing, as best you can. These are pretty good because they're very compact and they're easy to carry around and stuff like that. Now, I know people have tried saw blades for parting tools. Now, I don't use this as a parting tool like a diamond parting tool, but when you get down to that very little piece of 1/4 inch that you don't want it to break off and pull out, this is a fine tooth Lenox, very hard blade with a really soft handle, and I only use this on my lathe in reverse. Why reverse? Because I'm holding it underneath the piece. If it catches, it's going to throw it away from me. The lathe is going to go this way. I'm sorry. That's not reverse. It's normal way. If I go from the bottom, if you're going from the top, I do it in reverse. And that's because I don't want this flipping the blade toward me if it ever caught. So far it never has. But that is one of the problems with a saw blade versus a regular parting tool. So be careful if you try this. The other thing I did is I had this machine by a machinist to fit my one-way lathe, so that I can screw on any 5/8 by 11 tool. And there's a lot of 5/8 by 11 out there because all the grinders use a 5/8 by 11 thread. So I had this machine, but it was strictly for one way. And that's great until you go to Frank's shop or someplace and you're not using the one way, you're using one of the small lathes. And I came up with an even cheaper, inexpensive solution, which is a 5/8 by 11 bolt. And I put a little bit of tape so it fits into the Morse taper. And then I use the chuck jaws to squeeze the bolt so it stays solid. And now you can spin on different wheels for different grits. So if you're sharpening tools and you want to sharpen them to 240 instead of stopping at 80 or 100, is what I use it for. And you can spin the different ones onto the shaft. And in a way, you have a portable tool sharpener wherever you go, because most lathes, the drive is MT2 on the headstock. So either way, more expensive solution, cheap solution. All right, now this is something that started out Frank's shop, and I took the idea a little further when I joined Tech Shop last year, and I bought some 1.25" aluminum because they showed me a jig that worked really well to sharpen a point tool. All right, now why 6-sided? Well, 6-sided gives me both. It gives me 2 sides to use on the skew end, and gives me 3 sides to sharpen the point tool. And you can get it very accurate and very sharp because you're not rounding it. And that's why I like that. But then I went one step further and went for a 1/4 inch and a 3/8. So I could do basically 4 tools as 4 jigs, or one handle that can handle up to 4 tools. So if I'm traveling like the Franks, I would throw this in my tool bag instead of 4 different tools.
So you got a set screw in there, so you can use it as a handle also?
3 set screws.
3 set.
Why? Because when you're doing this jig, you want that tool to be exactly centered, right? And whenever you use 1 set screw, it tends to skew it to one side. Well, when you tighten 3 set screws, it doesn't take too much luck to get it pretty close to exactly centered, because you can see the space all the way around. And I use 3 set screws on both sides for that reason, because you want it to be balanced. So this tool I use quite a bit, and it's very transportable. I do cut this foam off whenever I'm sharpening, or I have 2 or 3 of these, one with foam and one without, because when I use it as a handle and I travel with it, I want something a little bit more padded than the cold aluminum. Okay.
So what is the foam?
Same thing you put on a tennis racket.
Yep.
Same stuff.
Okay.
Stick to itself. And I use it for a lot of different things. This is the same stuff, feel. That really makes it cozy. It's not going to feel like it's going to slip out of your hand.
Can we pass that around?
Oh yeah, sure.
So the
Absolutely.
handle is made of the tape? There's
It's
no
a
handle on it, it's just tape?
It's a very long Lennox, hardened, 18 tooth per inch, and it's taped first and then padded with the foam.
I
Yeah.
bought it's a standard issue Babolat regrip for your tennis racket.
Yeah.
And put it on the Thompson aluminum handle for the turning tool.
Yes.
It's just a whole lot more comfortable.
Absolutely. Anything that's steel or aluminum that's cold makes it more comfortable. Yep. All right, we're going along here. This is plates that I made for the stronghold chuck. These go right in where the jaws do. So all of a sudden, I now have a wooden surface that's accurate and closes, because it's all done with a laser. So these holes are very precise. And I can pinch things. I can turn a groove in it and then pinch it, because now I can open and close these 4 sets of jaws. So this is a wooden set of jaws to fit my stronghold. And there's an amazing amount of things you can do with this for those special. You can always put a junk piece of wood on there and cut a groove and try to get it right. But with this, you can open and close it.
Why'd you leave the squares on the outside?
Why did I leave it square?
Yeah.
Because I can go all the way to the top here. If I rounded it, I'd lose 2 to 3 inches. Yeah. Yep.
It's really
Good question.
It's really a blank.
It's a blank.
It's not a chuck the way it sets there.
It's in place of the jaws. I don't
Yeah.
use chuck jaws. I use this.
But you gotta turn a chuck into it.
What's that?
You gotta turn something in it to make it chuck.
Oh, yeah, or put screws in it, or a number of other things. Yeah,
Sure.
pegs, a lot of different ways you can use them. But I did it at tech shop, so I know these are perfectly square, and when they come together in the chuck jaws, they all line up. So, all right, let's say you turned a bowl, and you're reversing it. And instead of making a squeeze-on spigot that you're going to tap the bowl on, you could actually put a groove in this and actually grip the bowl. You can. I'll bring them over and demonstrate them sometime. Yep. All right. The next thing I did is I looked at the price of calibers, and these metal calibers seemed outrageous to me for 2 stamped pieces of aluminum or steel. So I made some of these in different sizes, and I did a little twist on it. I wanted them to be really flexible, so I made them so you could flip them all the way around. There's a lock nut, so they look like a pair of sunglasses now. But do you see the difference in reaching into something that's tall and a cylinder versus a bowl or something that's hollow form? This straight edge allows you to do a measurement where this is deep and this is the outside. So the fact that every one of these has this flexibility allows you to do a very quick. Also, this will not damage the wood. My metal set, I've nicked the wood, I can't tell you how many times, where this is soft enough, it's not going to put little dots in the wood.
Did you make that out?
This was done with a laser, and this is high-grade cabinet oak plywood. And the laser burns it out, so I know this is, very accurate from the end. Now, there's some flexibility. You don't put this in your wood and squeeze it until it breaks. But if you drop these, it's not going to damage them as well, because the worst thing that can happen is you break one, and you spend $5 for another set. Okay, anybody can guess what this is?
I've been waiting for that.
No, but when you play it in, we're all even.
Any guesses? All right, I use a lot of aerosols, not just in wood turning, but I use it. Yes. 4 cans, up to 4 cans. This hangs. I have a hook in my garage, a bicycle hook that hooks on here. I have a battery pack that fits all my other things, slips in there. This is in my garage, in my shed, in my workshop. And I hook this up, slip the battery pack in, and I have up to 4 cans. And you can shake them for well over a minute without wearing your arm out. And the advantage is you actually get more spray paint out of the cans if you really do follow the instructions and shake it vigorously for over a minute. Well, if I know I'm going to use, on the project I built these things called bloom bazookas, and I use black, olive drab, brown, and a tan. I use 4 colors, so I put all 4 in here, shake it for a minute and a half, and I'm good for the day because the can's been very well shaken.
What nightmare caused you to think about this?
It's just that I had to shake cans all the time. So I used this not just because I had it, but because a Sawzall has a higher rep rate. You could use a Sawzall. But the Sawzall didn't come with a bar that's really reinforced top and bottom. And all I did was take this blade that used to cross each other and you could cut your finger off very easily. Took this apart, took the second blade, flipped it around, put it back together, and now both blades are together. These go together. So they're not going to cut anything. And the cans are actually glued to this part, not the rods. Okay? All right, the cans are glued to the piece that moves only. Obviously, you don't want to glue it to the piece that's stabilizing it. And you wanted enough. Tell us how you know that. There are 2 there are two pieces to most of these hedge trimmers, and people don't realize how they actually are cutting.
I want you to plug that thing in and scratch your back.
I don't think I tried that.
That's a lot of time
All right, had to bring something that could win a prize. You know? All right.
Most jig is for sure.
It's pretty jiggy. Okay, one last thing. This isn't a jig I made, but you all should know about these. This is a Morris Taper 2 collet. So many collets you go out there and you buy, you got to bolt something on your lathe and the collet goes into that. And it can hold various sizes. Well, within the Morris Taper range, there's 7 sizes of metric and 7 sizes of standards. That collets fit right into your Morris Taper. So if you got a small drill, or you want to hold a bottle stopper, and I have some bottle stoppers that have wooden dowels, and I have a perfect size that the wooden dowel slides into, and then there's a thread on this side. That thread goes through the hole on the headstock, and I have a big wing nut that I made that I can tighten it, and what you're doing is you're pulling this into the Morris Taper, and the more you do, the tighter it squeezes, and you can control it. And when you're all done, to get your piece out, you loosen up your wing nut, take your wooden mallet, tap the threaded rod, and out it comes. No pain. These things sell, you can find them on the website in metric. I found a place that was selling the metric one. 7 sizes were like $28 plus $10 shipping. The standard sizes were like $55 for the 7 standard sizes. And there was no shipping. So I found them 2 different. I did find one site that would sell me the 7 set metric and the 7 set standard at one place. That would have been more convenient.
I think you missed your calling. You probably should be designing sex toys.
I could get into that, yes. So I have all sets, and I've decided, you know, the metric and the standard, those 7s are close. But these are very precision fit. If you're putting a drill bit in, you want it to grip it all the way around and don't want it to mar the surface in a lot of cases. So they work great. So look for them on the web and tell me how you've used them too. But I've used 50 times now for various projects.
Do you find a way to use it in the tailstock?
There are things you can put in the tailstock like this, but my tailstock is Morris Taper 3. So
Whatever the template is there a way to hold it in there and draw it?
yeah.
Draw bar
Oh,
through the
sure.
tailstock?
Oh, sure. Sure, but since mine are 2, I use it mainly in the headstock because that's 2 and the tailstock is 3. But I could use it with an adapter. And the tailstock, what I don't know for sure is whether the rod that goes into the threaded end on the back will clear all the way out. Because that hole gets pretty small on some tailstocks. But I bet you could probably rig something where you got a thread inside the thread and the actual rod is thinner.
Isn't the reason for the Morris Taper 3 so you can drill through?
The reason is,
Like manhole
It's for the thrust capability.
Because it's a metal
yes,
lathe.
right. And I use the Morris Taper 3 for big drill bits and things where I'm using the full 3. You can always go down with it's much harder to go up because it sticks out real far and it's not very stable. So. Well, a Jacobs chuck can come out of that Morris Taper. If you're going to put a Jacobs chuck in, you almost have to put a threaded rod into the back. Because if you're putting any side pressure on a Jacobs chuck, all of a sudden the thing wiggles itself out of the Morris Taper. Now what this is doing, it's pulling these jaws shut the more you tighten the wing nut. And it's really gripping. It's really gripping. Correct. And I've had them come loose.
Well, you have to have a drawbar for the jig.
Exactly. You'd have to have a drawbar.
And you're putting it in there and dry it.
Right, and you tend to mar whatever surface because you got really 3-point squeezing, where this is almost uniform all the way around. That's why the 7 sizes. Now, it doesn't go much bigger than, I forget what the biggest, this is 3/8 is one I grabbed. but there might be one bigger than this too. But this works great for wine bottle stoppers where you're using the real cork and you're using a dowel, because now you can put the dowel, glue it right in the wood before you've done any turning. Put it right into this and turn it complete. Ready to glue the cork onto the dowel. And it's done. So, and we all have jigs for bottle stoppers. They work great. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Questions? Okay. Thanks. Next. Yeah.
It's helpful not to record it really long again.
Yeah, Preston McQueen probably brought the most sophisticated jig here, but it's what everybody has for their screwdrivers. I just made something like this for my training tools, and it turns out that most of the handles are better than the collets. So you can measure the collet and drill the hole, and it goes in there and doesn't fall all the way through. Some of the tools, it's not the way, though. Like this one, if you drill the hole round like this, it won't go all the way in. So I found that I had to drill a smaller hole to fit this, and then a bigger hole to fit that, and you turn it a little bit, and then I stick it in there, and it doesn't fall out. So I had this behind my lathe, and I could just reach over and grab a tool and change like that. So that's it. Good.
Before we continue, why don't we take a little break? We'll go through instant gallery. I know we're a little bit early in the break, but let's go through the instant gallery. And Lars?
Yeah. So it comes with little bitty corks that won't hold anything, and you can use a wine bottle stopper. And you get to drink the wine, make something a whole lot longer, so you can hang on to the big bowls with it. Problem is, how do you get a hole straight through? Standard issue V-jig, V-block, squared it up on the drill press, got it centered, let me put a nice hole the right size right through the cork, and I'm in business, and I can catch the bowls with the curved edges on the gold jaws. Works. While I'm up here, I'm sitting here looking at this thing.
I don't know what the switch is for.
Remind the light.
Rack, but I guess they're already on.
First day of the month, first time each month when I get out into my shop, I just take every can of paint out there, turn it upside down. Next month when I go out, turn them back over, nothing settles. It's not as much fun as this, but
develops different muscles.
yeah.
In the line of wine corks and things like that, about 20 years ago or so, I started making what I called woodworking, which was not really woodworking at the time, but making bulletin boards out of wine corks. And at first it was really laborious because I used an X-Acto saw to cut each cork in half, so that took about 2 minutes per cork. And I've calculated that when you split them in half and put them down, it takes about 30 to 40 corks cut in half to make 1 square foot. So you can see where this is a losing situation. So I got a little reciprocating saw, and I've cut it down to maybe 5 seconds per cork. And I recently, after like last fall, I got a commission to make one. I haven't made one in a long time. So I wanted to do something a little bit easier on me, and I got a little bit jiggy about it. So this little guy goes onto the bandsaw, slides in the groove, and after a little bit of mediocre measuring, cut a slot in it for where the cork would lie.
Cool.
Used table saw to cut the 45-degree angles. I thought that was kind of clever. Didn't split the wood too many times with the screws. And so now just drop the cork in, run it right through, which of course wasn't quite on center, so I used some of that high density, Jeff, you hit it when I call it plastic, right? But high density stuff to move it up a little bit so the saw kerf is like right down the middle of of the cork. And so I worked that out very nicely, got through it pretty fast.
And how many fingertips do you still have?
All of them.
they're there. You have to be a little careful with it, but I've done more damage to myself with the table saw than with the bandsaw so far.
So Bob, you recommend maybe 2 clamps that kind of hold them?
Yeah, easily. Yeah. Definitely with clamps. Yeah, no question. Clamps. If you're in clamps. Now, the other thing, which I didn't bring tonight, because Jeff didn't want me to put it in the back of his cart, and I didn't want to carry like 40 or 50 pounds in here to show to you, is something that I got out of the AAW publication, which is a jig, if you will, for cutting logs in half lengthwise. I made one of these once about a couple of years ago, took a couple 2x4s, put a couple cross beams on it, set it down on the ground, took chainsaw, bang, the log fell apart beautifully. And the chainsaw cut through the bottom of it, it fell apart. And chainsaws don't like cutting dirt. So what I have here are 5, you can all pass these around if you want, or put them up whatever you want with them. Let's put them all together. This is my take on the AAW design, which is basically some 2x6s, that's not right, 1x8 or 12 verticals, cut it diagonal to form a notch to sit the log in. But the neat thing is, you want them to be separated by an inch or 2 so the blade has somewhere to go without tearing up the jig, which I've already done. I practiced that this afternoon, and that's another reason for making these sides wide, so that you can kind of whack into it with the saw and have some left for another log. But very effective, very easy. Log sits up about this high. And finally, I use some bungee cords to hold some of the logs on. If they have like a weird thing sticking up, a big, L shape or something like that, I could wrap some bungee cords around it to hold the log in the V and do a sideways cut on it too, so it's very flexible too. That's my theory. Thank you.
I didn't invent anything here. I just scaled down something that has already been invented. Well, actually, I invented the pointer, laser pointer here. It was back about the time the guy invented the internet that I did that. I think. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, I like making small hollow forms and like Christmas ornaments, and unlike Alan, I have problems with the back end of the globe or the bottom end of a hollow form, and normally I wind up with it way too thin or way too thick. So I thought, well, the laser pointer showing you where your cutter is might be the answer, and all I could find were the very large units that are made for the deep boring things like the Jameson or some of them, and of course that's way too big for what I needed. So I just put this together, bought the laser pointer at, I don't remember, it was Office Max or Staples, something like that. I have several hollowing tools that I use. Most of them I made myself, so this collar right here will fit on the ferrule of any of the small hollowing tools that I have. And one of these days I'm going to put a piece of metal or something on here that I can hold the laser on, but what I do is I just use a piece of electric tape right now to cut it on like that.
Can't beat the price.
And the light that I was getting, the dot, with it being a pointer, was way too big. So I turned to that old universal fix-it-all duct tape, and I stuck it over the lens, and then I took a needle and made a tiny little prick in it, and I wound up with just a tiny little dot like that on the end of it. And so far, it's worked fine for me. I did thread this rod and put a nut on the top, because holding the thing and trying to adjust it, sometimes I would loosen this one and bam, the whole business dropped to the floor. And after that happened several times, I threaded the end of it and just put a nut on the end so that it wouldn't. But if you wanted, wanted different dimensions, it's simply a matter of a 1/4 inch steel rod threading the end of one end, and you can make it as big as you want. In fact, I started out with it much bigger, and it was just getting in the way, so I cut them off. So the stores have a laser pointer that one of them anyway, that they call a mini pointer. And it might even work better than this one, but they were out of it and they didn't have a picture of it and couldn't tell me anything about it. And I tend to get impatient when I'm making something, so I just bought this one that they had in stock. Those big boring rigs are, $125 up that I've seen. And this one, I had everything I needed except the laser pointer. I think it cost me $19.95. Something like that.
A good source for laser pointers are the gun shows. A good source for laser pointers are gun shows.
Well,
The booths at a gun show, most of them have them. They're really small. They work good for this application as well.
okay, the ones I've seen there have typically been ones that fit onto a handgun.
Right.
And are bigger. But I mean, if this were smaller, I would like it better. But I mean, it works fine.
Using the duct tape is just genius. Yeah, but you're wasting all that laser.
Did you buy any of those fittings, or you made all of those?
I bought these thumb screws right here.
That's it.
And the pointer. And I had the little rods and a piece of a 1-inch aluminum rod and all I had in my shop. And so I just, that's why I say I might have tax and everything, maybe $22 or $3 in it is all. And there's one thing you have to remember though, using these, that I found out the hard way too, is this pointer shining here, it gives you the horizontal position of this cutter. It doesn't tell you where it is like this. And if you're inside a round part and you tilt it up a little bit, or you tilt it down a little bit, your dot still says, oh, you're nice over there,
The dot says, keep going.
Oh yeah, the dot says you're all right, but
Get one of those levels.
This is something I first saw probably about 10 years ago. It's called a Longworth chuck. And the plans for this are all over the internet, pretty easy to find them, nothing too shocking there. Unfortunately, the gentleman, Mr. Longworth, never realized any commercial success from this. He ended up passing away. I did see probably in the last 2 years, there is a commercial version of this out now. It's in metal, it's pushing $300, I think. I made this in about an hour with some scrap MDF and plywood I had, and probably a good $3.50 in parts from Lowe's. The way this works is, if you have a small bowl, you want to finish turn the bottom, you set it in here, take the finger holds, turn it tight, tightens it up, self-centers. And I took the faceplate that came with my mini lathe that I never used, put it on the back so I can simply tighten it on. I think somebody else mentioned to me during the break that they did a similar type thing, but they just clamped using their jumbo jaws or stronghold jaws. They simply clamped in the back over here, and that works just as well. Very easy to make. Like I said, I used a router, maybe an hour worth of time. Advantage that I think of this versus, particularly for novices, people that just start who don't want to spend a ton of money on different accessories, we're kind of taught to use a jam chuck. So we're making some kind of a groove, and then we're trying to get it in that groove, and usually the groove's too big, so then we have to go get some paper, or we have to go get a paper towel and try to get it in there and wet it and all that. This does away with all that. Again, you simply put it in here, twist, it tightens, and self-centers. Hours worth of time, $3 in parts. So
How did you get the radius on the router cut?
that's a great question. So if you can imagine, I drew kind of a grid on here, 90 degrees. simply across. Using this as a center point, I made a base plate on my router, a simple arc jig, so I could turn it around an arc. Over here, I started what would have been a straight line going through, routed down like that. Went over to this, did the same thing, simply worked my way around to all 4 points, and then took this top plate right here and flipped it upside down. So when you do that, the holes, when you of course route them, they line up perfectly. You flip the top one upside down, they start to work against each other, which gives you that action of being able to go wider or smaller.
It does help if you number the, when you flip it, let's say the one cut is over the one cut.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I probably made this, I'm guessing 8, 9 years ago.
What'd you call it?
It's a Longworth, L-O-N-G, Worth, W-R-T-H, Longworth chuck. Again, just Google it, you'll find all kinds of plans to make it on the internet.
I haven't tried it myself, but you guys have into segmented turning. I saw an article where they use a Longworth chuck on the headstock. Put the ring in the headstock, put whatever's glued up on the tailstock center and jam it in there, and it centers the whole mess up on the glue guns.
Yep.
Yeah, if you don't Google that, try YouTube, because I've seen some of those recently. And
Yeah.
There's a history of Longworth, and it's like the day after he showed it to his club or whatever, he died of a heart attack.
Exactly.
So it's like, whoa. But there's a lot of designs, and they go into detail about how to do that.
Yeah, there's other ones that you can make one yourself too, instead of having 4 connection points that have 8. Just how fancy you want to get with your router.
Oh, look at that. 3 or 4 years ago, we actually made 3 of these for the craft center here, and these are 8-pointers.
Yeah.
Bob's always trying to one-up me.
It's the same general idea. And what Glenn's saying is true. You can get them down to quite small, actually, in the center. You can grab a small piece.
Yeah, what I'm showing here is obviously capturing it on the inside. If I had something, if you imagine the inside profile of this kind of hooking in, you could do the same thing where you capture it on the outside. Expansion, exactly. And I've done that with small little bowls in there. So I just brought it in. I brought it in 2 years ago. I showed it then, but I figured there's a lot of new faces. I won a prize a couple years ago, so I was hoping Lightning Strike twice.
Chapel Hill Club at Frank's shop, we make a lot of tools. So this is actually, Terry invented this, right? This is for, this is a pardon? It's the first time you saw it?
Yeah, first time you saw it.
Okay. So, here's a spindle master. Do you know what those are?
No, well then explain it.
I don't know, I never use it much, but it's like a spindle gouge. And in order to put this into a jig to sharpen it, along with a lot of your other tools too, like if you got a favorite bowl gouge, you're getting down to the very end, you can flatten the top of this and still fit it in your sharpening jig and use the whole thing up. And when we make these tools, you got to have the top of the rod flat. So you got a round rod and you want to get it flat. Well, how do you do that? You put it in here, lock it in place, and then you can hold this on your grinder and flatten that edge and keep it the same all the way across.
It holds in place.
Yeah, what are you locking it with?
Set screw.
There's a set screw in here. And I know it's a collet, so you got a regular set screw in the side. So you can lock that in place. You can envision putting this on your grinder table up against the wheel and go back and forth. You'll get a perfectly flat spot on the top.
Takes all the fun out of it.
Pull that collet out and put it in different sizes?
You can put it, yeah, this, well, it's better that it doesn't spin. If it spins in there, you got a problem. But for $15, I can sell you more collets, bigger sizes.
If it spins, if you need to make it round again.
Yeah, so that's not so good. And also, when you're doing these spindle masters, we just make this out of in this case, it's a 5/16 rod, 3/8 rod. You're going to take about a third of the top of the rod down right where your tip is, so you can get a good cutting edge around there. Same way, you can just do that while you're at the grinder. Makes it very fast to make it. And then this will fit in normal sharpening jig and put that tip right back on it again. There's two of these up here. If you look at them later, different grinds on them is all, but again, we make them with all sorts of different grinds. This is Mark Soleil's no bevel. Todd was showing you his jig for the point tool. We've got one that we make out of aluminum. It's just 6-sided aluminum like this. You don't really even need to have a set screw on it. You can adjust your sharpening jig so this just fits down in there. Hold on to it good and tight and you can get the 3 on here. I know he said it had to be specific, but I can't, it had to be precise, but not when I'm turning. So you're just trying to get 3 sides, and then you can also put the other side on, get a nice little skew chisel on the other end. This 1/4-inch rod just makes 2 great tools. Most of us have one just like this. Point tool on one end, little skew on the other end. That way you can use it both ways, switch it around. Probably most people haven't seen these handles, right? These are brand new from Doug Thompson. They're the short ones. And we got a whole bunch of them to try out, and they're really nice. They're 7-inch metal handles.
What diameters do those handles come in?
1/4, 3/8, and half. I think, yeah. 1/4, 3/8, and half. This little block. So when the wheel on your grinder gets down really low, gets small, and you're getting below center as you sharpen, that's not so good, right? So you want to get above center. So we just make these little blocks, and this fits right back in there on your sharpening jig. It's got a little magnet in the back and it holds it in, and this will put you up above center. Because those wheels are expensive, so we can use them until they're pretty small.
Yeah.
Alan couldn't believe
It's like a little meat on our wheels.
But it still works.
Not a tight curve, yeah. You like that tight curve on it?
Huh?
You like that tight curve on it?
Yeah. Well,
Good hollow around on the backside.
You can wrap down the top and just...
Everything's hollow when you do that. You guys need to sell more blanks and more collets so you can get new wheels.
Yeah, well. The other thing for a lot of the tools, did anybody have any here with that? So you can get these little carbide, well, these aren't carbide, these are just high-speed steel, but make a hollowing tool or a, it can be for anything, but primarily for hollowing, where you put the tip, make them up, put them on the end, then you gotta sharpen them. So we've got these little jigs that we make, just 3/8 rod, and you tap it, put a set screw in the top. We also got a hole in the front, so you can put these bits in as well, if you want to use one of those. And they really hollow fast if you're into a lot of hollowing. You can take that tip, put it in here and sharpen it up.
What is that?
What's that high-speed square steel rod?
Yeah, just
You're moving around a little too much from where I'm having a hard time with these small
Okay.
pieces.
All right, but if you haven't used this kind of a setup for hollowing, I'd recommend you try it. You just have to buy these, get any piece of rod, make your tool, drill a hole that this fits in. I made one last night. It took me like 10 minutes. I think actually Norm was over and made some. You can make different kinds of tips. Didn't you make different tips for different things?
Yep. Right angle.
Yeah,
You got
all
it.
different, for pennies. It's really not expensive at all. So, this thing, This is what, just a really cheap,
Cheap Ellsworth?
Ellsworth.
The idea came from David Ellsworth.
David Ellsworth, yeah. Block of
Metal
wood,
one. I made those.
put a screw in the bottom with a nut inside there, and you can run your tool in and sharpen it. If you don't want to buy the expensive goods. Okay? I think that's it. There you go.
Mechanical engineer. And I've been amazed over the years I've been doing this at how many of you guys are really into working with machining shit. I like to make things out of wood. So, somebody, maybe Frank, taught me about drill a hole in the end of a golf ball that fits over the end of the tailstock of your one-way life center. It's a great pusher, won't mar your surface. If you're a little more ambitious, you'd take any piece of waste wood and do the same thing and put a nice rubber washer on the end, and you won't mar any surfaces.
You also won't bang your elbow into the tailstock.
This is also, it will not hurt. I've made over the years, I bet I got 15 different versions of this, which are the other side of this. This is in your chuck, and this is in your tailstock, and they're holding the piece in between while you're working on it.
Pen press.
What is the black material on your...
This is neoprene. I guess it's probably quarter-inch neoprene.
It's easy to get it from...
And I don't know who taught me this. It also might have been Frank. But make yourself some plywood discs. And if you make a set of these, you can use it to adjust the depth of your screw that sticks out into your screw chuck. And if you're doing skinny things like platters, and you want to have about 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch of that screw in, this is the way you adjust it. Total cost on all of this stuff is probably junk. The one thing I do that I have some metal in is I make, instead of bottle stoppers, I make lamp finials. And you can buy the gadgets to make lamp finials on the web. And I found a screw that's exactly the same thread, whatever the hell it is, as the finial. And I took a piece of MDF and made myself found the center, drilled a hole, CA glued that screw in here to the exact depth that the finial goes to. And having done that, I then just drill a little hole in any piece of junk wood and put a little CA glue on here and hold it against it. It sucks it on. And then you can do anything you want to in terms of shaping your finial. And these gadgets come in 3 or 4 different sizes. This is the teeniest one. People buy them.
Bob, does that after you glue it in, does that say in the lamp?
This is gripped in the chuck. This becomes the base of the finial. And they are standards. Every lamp finial in the world has that hole in the bottom of it.
You mean the thing that holds the shade on?
Yeah.
One of the top.
And the difference in these is they make them in about 3 different heights. So depending on how big you want to make your finial and how high you want it to stick up. This is the smallest one. But this is as fancy as I've ever gotten with metal guys, a screw.
What do you sell the finials for?
Anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks.
The shade on, what do you think?
I said sell them.
The cool thing is you can use little pieces of junk, nice wood. Really nice wood that's just little junky pieces. And I didn't bring, but I have at home, a version of what Todd was describing down there, except much quicker and cheaper. I used MDF discs, and I have something very similar to this on the back. And I can just grab this in my chuck, and I now have a 12-inch disc, and I just glued different grits on the top, and periodically I rip it off and slap a new sheet on. I don't even cut it to fit. I put the thing up and get it spinning and make it fit with my gouge. And from Al Sturt years ago, I learned to make several flat platforms using 1-inch dowels for the base. And if you make a rectangular platform and you use that against this spinning disc, you've got your $300 disc sander, which costs you $8 maybe, if you're lucky. Al also suggests making a flat platform and cutting curves in it, and you can use those to absolutely mark, if you line them up with the center point, you get perfect radial markings on a bowl or a hollow form that you're using. I forgot to bring those in. On his website, he's got the layout for, 24, 48, a bunch of different segments that you can lay out on a disc, same kind of thing. And instead of the fancy stuff, you just use pencil. Mark it around, put your piece up, lay that flat platform against it, and you can mark both ends. And if you've seen a lot of his carved bowls, they're done that way very quick and easy. So I don't own a single jig or thing that has any machine metal in it except this screw. I even made for my bandsaw a very functional fence that does have a couple of C-clamps on it, but otherwise it's wood. That's it.
Thanks, Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob too.
Bobby!
I was always jealous, when I got my Powermatic, I was always jealous of Frank Kendra's vacuum chuck. I saw over there and a lot of other folks vacuum chuck. And you want to turn something around, sometimes you can't grip it mechanically and so on and so forth. So I found some plans on the internet, which is where most of my inspiration seems to come from, and made up one of my own. Probably the trickiest part is the adapter for the headstock. Now, some of them tap into the end of the, like the wheel, the hand wheel. This has a very cheap piece. It's one of those lamp cores you get at the hardware store, and clamps the inside to the outside. And a couple of bushings to seal it that turn out of high density polyethylene and standard hardware. The magic is in here, which houses two ball bearings. These are sealed ball bearings, and a piece of brass tubing thread on the end. Again, Lowe's or Home Depot, and a couple of fittings to tie it to the hose that goes down to my vacuum pump. Important part about this is it needs to be either well sealed, and this is pretty well varnished, and because you don't want this to allow air penetration. Some of these woods pass a surprising amount of air through them that you find out the hard way when you're trying to grip something, and you know everything is sealed right theoretically, but it actually can draw air right through the wood. The other, and there's a layout on here that shows how I plumbed it up with the gauge and the control valve and so on. The other magic, quite so magical, is the actual chuck itself, with a small faceplate to hook it up to the lathe. The white part is made from PVC couplings, hardware store item or a Home Depot type of item. These are, I had a lot of cherry, so I turned a groove in this guy. Actually, I chucked up this thing, and then I trued the end. You'd think the end would be nice and flat and round. Well, it's close, but if you want a nice tight fit on here, which I did, you find it's off a considerable amount. So I had to actually chuck this up, true the end, put it in this guy, and then true the outside end over here before I could put the ring on. The magic of the ring is it's got both roundness on the outside for an inside of a say a bowl, and it's got roundness on the inside if you want to put maybe a hollow form in there with a fairly large amount of surface area contacting it. The longer the surface area here that's in contact, the less air migration you have through that seal. So the roundness over here isn't just decorative, it's quite functional. I found out that you just set these things down on a flat surface, two things happen. The end gets flat, takes kind of a set, and the sides start to, because there's a certain amount of tension in this rubber, and the adhesive over time will just allow it to relax and come up. So again, this is just like the one-way set, but I'd probably have $25 in this versus a couple $300 for the one-way set and all that stuff. The variation on that is.
Buy the pump, you're up to over $1,100.
Is that right? Well, I got a pump for like $80. A guy named Bill Noble on the West Coast. Some of you may know him on the website. I got these from him too. This is a flat plate. It put it on the chuck, and you can put some kind of bowl thing on here, and it may not fit this contour the way you want. The difficulty with this is I find that if there's just an edge contact on here, it doesn't really seal very well, so I don't use this too much. If you hold it in with the tailstock, well then, you've lost a lot of the magic of the vacuum chuck because you still have to hold it on. But it does work that way. This is the first one I made, and frankly, I don't use it a whole lot. Having a vacuum chuck opens up the reverse turning possibilities so much that I really like mine. So one of my favorite things I've done is build this. And it was a lot of fun.
The only thing I'd say, Bob, is most of us don't finish our gallery pieces as well as you finish at jigs.
You're out of control. That's not purely decorative, although I get pleasure out of making stuff look good. But no matter what the wood in here, there's some air migration through it. Without sealing it, then it's less efficient. Now this is cherry. It's not really an open pore wood, but
It's the 2 hours of buffing.
2 hours of popping doesn't get you anywhere.
Is that for personal experience? Any questions?
Bob, on your bearing, if somebody wants to make one, do they have any specific considerations just other than sealed bearing?
These can be sealed bearing. There are three kinds of bearing: open bearing, there's shielded bearings, and sealed bearings. Open ones, you can see the walls and the
Like a wheel bearing.
yeah, like a wheel bearing.
Tracy.
And a shielded bearing has got kind of metal bearing here, and that keeps the big chips out. The sealed bearing has got a plastic or rubber, not rubber, it's a moderately hard plastic, and that actually rubs all the way around, where the shield has an opening, and it will allow air through it. Now, I suppose there's a lifetime of these that says that at some point that seal's going to degrade, wear, or whatever, but probably not in my lifetime. The other difficulty here is these are not easily replaceable. And these are epoxied into the housing. So I would probably easier rebuild it than try and get it out and get it back in lined up nicely.
Hey Bob, how do you go from the bearing to the plumbing pipe fit?
The bearing.
I know how you got the bearing in there, but that's good.
All right. The bearing is in there with a space between them. And the benefit of that is two bearings is half the air migration, and it also gives you a stability, a wheelbase is the called. It turned out that I was able to find a bearing with an ID very close to this standard 1/4 inch, I think, maybe it's 3/8, I forget which, piece of copper tubing. What I had to do though was I actually had to put it in the lathe with a file and turn down a slight amount so it fit inside. Not hard to do, a little bit of patience. And that fit in there, goes all the way to the end.
So it's just a horse fit.
Well, I put some CA glue in there to seal it. But frankly, the force on this is very small. So I didn't think that strength was required, and the CA is doing just fine. The rest are just standard fittings to a quick disconnect to go down to the vacuum pump, or to the piping that goes up in my gauge and my release valve. It turned out to be easier than I thought. Probably I spent more time making sure the seal between this and the wood here was good. In fact, I don't remember how I did it. Probably a lot of glue. Actually, I do remember this. I actually tapped this thing to the size and glued it in there to minimize any. I didn't know what it was going to have, so maybe I over-designed that part. I didn't want to have to undo it and redo it because I knew that it was not easily disassemblable. But it was fun. I'm an engineer too, and maybe some you know. So doing this kind of stuff, ginning up fixtures and things like that is fun also in addition to the turning.
Is that long shaft and thread?
It's all threaded.
All in the lathe.
Say again?
When you put that in the lathe, how do you get that end seals one end, how do you get it inside?
Well, it's force fit on the wheel side of the headstock. And this seals into the opening. But frankly, the only seal that's really important is this one. Because this end is sealed internally to the vacuum seals. So this has to seal itself to the spindle. And the spindle seals itself on this surface to the chuck. Occasionally I find that this surface is not flat enough, so I tighten it down. Coincidentally and luckily, this nut matches the wrench that comes with the Powermatic.
Matches what?
The yellow wrench that comes with the Powermatic happens to fit this nut. I wish I could say it planted that way, but no. That was a little low.
The length of that lamp rod, that's the width of your headstock?
Yeah. So you buy one 24 inches, whatever, and you cut it to what you need. And this ends up with the nuts in place, locked down. There's about 8 inches sticking out. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think that's everybody. Thank you everybody for bringing those back there. So it's going to start over here. If you think this is the most creative, throw your hand up in the air.
What are the different topics? What are the different?
Tell us the different categories.
Different topics. Most creative, best executed, and jiggiest jig. However you define that. However you define those. So first one we'll do most creative. Thank you for that vote. Yeah, I think Todd's probably got the most creative with his. Let's bunch down here for this. All right, I think we kind of got fairly close between Todd and his aerosol cans and this one. Let's start right here. One vote. Hands up in the air for this one. Hands up in the air for this one. As luck would have it, that's very even. How about wood for both of them? There you go. Starting down over here for, what did I say the next one? Best executed. However you define that, I guess maybe best built, best executed. Do you have a question, Preston, or you just, no, you're voting?
Could done it with claps.
Yeah, that does look kind of pretty. Like some of the things I buy, I guess. All right, last one. Jiggiest jig. I really don't know what that means, but whatever you consider to be the jiggiest jig that you've seen here tonight.
Oh, come on.
However you define jiggy, Bob.
Things you wouldn't think of in a million years. Yeah, it's gotta be that.
You guys all vote for that? All right, looks like we're between Todd's aerosol cans and this one again. Let's try that one more time so I can see half the hands go for each. Vote for this. Vote for that.
One of them's creative, the other one's jiggy. Come on.
Want to do that? One's jiggy, one's creative. One's creative, one's jiggy?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so whoever won, back on the, I guess we had Bob. Yeah, Bob won for that. Todd. And who was on this one? Okay. On top of the name tag, boxes back there, there's some cherry or maple. Take your pick and grab whatever you want. Okay? Now for the real stuff. We got a raffle, and I think everybody knows how that works. $5 gets you 6 tickets.